Welcome to On the Beat Live. I am Tommy Ashley, responsible by Johnny T-Shirt, johnnytshirt.com. Man down tonight. Jeremiah Holloway has taken one for the team. He is in Reynolds Coliseum watching the Carolina women, who are at the moment not doing great. But we do have the man, Adam Smith, and the young Padawan, his young Padawan, Evan Rogers. We're going to do it. We're going to do it quick because we have some roasting to do at the end of the show. What's going on, fellas?
Hey,
How,
man.
how crowded was the Dean Dome today? People show up when it's Duke Carolina week, right?
You know what? I was selfishly, I was like whispering to Evan and Jeremiah. I was and video intern Jalen, our guy Jalen, who hustled over from class to make it. He did a great job. Was you know what we benefited from is that the Carolina Panthers introduced their new head coach and their new general manager today because that sort of now just strictly selfishly cut out like half of the riffraff that would have been there, like from the TV cameras. So, yeah, it was a bigger crowd, but it would have been I think the crowd would have been even larger had half of the people not been down in Charlotte today.
Yeah, I
So
saw a couple of
that
the
helped us
local.
out.
Yeah, I saw a couple of the local stations sent their main guys to Charlotte to cover that. We'll see how that one goes. I have no faith in the Carolina Panthers. I'd like to because it'd be nice to have a team to pull for in your state, but
It's wild to see Dan Morgan running a team. That's
it it just strictly makes me feel very old.
yeah.
I mean, he last time I saw him, he was getting concussed for Miami. Playing for the Hurricanes. But yeah, it's interesting how that works. Evan, what was it like being in the Smith Center with all the hype? I mean, y'all got three players and Hubert. Hubert very happy today. It seemed like very jovial at times. It's amazing what winning basketball will do in spite of what happened in Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, normal week it's like 6 or 7 reporters there at him, right? About. I mean, 6, 7, 8 on a busy week. Today there was probably 20 plus and 5 or 6 cameras in the back for the various TV stations.
You got some of the national people coming. Jeff
Yeah,
Borzello was there from ESPN today. Like
yeah.
you
There
got
was they're the big guns are out.
And I
Um,
guess the media spot up top will be full for one of the
yeah.
few times up there. I've noticed on TV it doesn't look very full often, but it'll be packed out, I guess, up there on Saturday afternoon.
when I left
I'll be
today, Steve Kirshner was taping names down outside. He was taping spots down on the tables outside. So, yeah, and interestingly enough, I not to cut Evan off, but yeah, you got guys going through there with, like the ESPN dudes are already hooking stuff up, in the press room. Like they're getting, I don't even know what they do with all those dang cables. I can barely turn my computer on. Um, but it's like people are already like stuff's already getting like strapped down, taped in, screwed in, the whole deal.
It is and with game day and everything, it's a circus. Duke Week is a circus. I mean, I covered it several times. I covered it at Cameron 2 or 3 times, and that was when I guess they probably redone the media room where they'd try to shoehorn 100 media people into a room about the size of a coat closet
It's
down
still the
under
same
there.
size, man.
They just put a fresh coat of paint on it. It looks
It's
like
still the
maybe.
same.
Old Cameron Indoor. Let's get right into it. Quotes of the week. We're going to try to keep it to the normal stuff. Adam, I'll let you go first and see if you do, in fact, steal Evans without knowing what Evans is. Adam, give me a good quote that you heard this week from North
And
Carolina.
obviously, I would never want to hurt Evan, as he's like a second son to me. No, I'm. Let's see. I'm scrolling over here. I had it. This is going to be, if I can find it. Um, where am I looking? I've lost it. Yes. Okay. This is going to be Harrison Ingram, who, as we know, is incredibly quotable. And this is after the Florida State game on this past Saturday down in Tallahassee. I mean, it seems like a lot has happened since then. You know what? They've played in Atlanta. Now Duke is coming. But this was a couple days ago down in Tallahassee. And I had asked Harrison Ingram very smoothly, by the way. I said, my question was, how selfish is Armando? Did not mean selfish at all. I meant unselfish. Because this has been one of these games where Armando had only taken like 3 or 4 shots, I think it was, and he'd just been screening and rebounding and defending all game long. Leonard Hamilton obviously raving about just the selflessness of Armando's play after that. Evan wrote a thing about his defense off of Hubert Live the other night. But so Harrison correctly corrected me for saying how selfish is Armando. And he was talking, and he was saying about what he did when he got into the portal when he was at Stanford. And he said that, you know, when UNC was recruiting out of the portal, him, his dad, and his brother sat down at one point and watched 15 UNC basketball games. And they tried to just focus on RJ and Armando because they knew the other guys weren't going to be around. And UNC had told Harrison these are going to be sort of our central pieces, which I thought was kind of fascinating that, you know, he's doing this, you know, and they're just trying to focus on 2 guys. And he said, you know, he's trying to watch how RJ played, watch how Armando played, and envision how he would fit with them. And again, I just thought it was fascinating. And he ended up saying, here's the quote. And when I was getting recruited, it honestly was kind of hard to believe everything they were saying, because if you just watch that team last year versus how we play this year, it's way different. So to hear Armando saying, he was telling me all the time, all he wants to do is win. All he wants to do is win. I mean, he's showing it now. He's screaming, he's screening, he's doing all the dirty work. You see him running back and playing defense. He might not touch the ball for 20 possessions, but he's still sprinting back on defense, blocking shots, directing the defense, doing everything we need. So I just thought that was a great quote. And with Harrison Ingram, you can pick anything the guy says, basically, is a great quote. But the insight there, I just think was fabulous. I mean, imagine this guy and his dad and his brother. You know, how do you do that? How do you say, like, don't look at Caleb Love, don't look at Leaky Black, don't look at Pete Nance? You know what I mean? He was also, that day, he was sort of like picking on himself because he said, these are the easiest threes I've ever shot in my life. You know, I can walk into these things. I can line them up because no one's coming out. He said, no one's closing out. They want me to shoot these threes, which we could get into later, the way he shot at Georgia Tech. But anyway, I thought that was some neat stuff after the game at FSU the other day.
Indeed. Ingram's an amazing young man. I mean, if he never played another game of basketball, he'd be successful in whatever he chose. I mean, it's pretty fascinating to see how he's been. And I remember during the recruiting process, he was pretty much the same way. But Evan, he didn't steal it, did he?
No, he did not.
You are up.
Yeah, so I'm also going to take one from Harrison, but this is from today.
You're welcome, Evan.
Really quick on the Baycott point, though, that I think is interesting. Against Florida State, I put it in that little Hubert Davis Live. Florida State was 8 of 20 on layups and dunks combined. So 40% right around the rim, and that's the tallest team in college basketball. So
Florida State was or Carolina was?
Florida State. They were 8 of 20 combined on layups and dunks that game. So, you know, Armando might not have another 20 and 20 game, but he's definitely impacting, like they said, the game in other ways. But yeah, I decided also to roll with Harrison Ingram, and this was from today, and the topic of he and his sister got brought up. For some context for people who might not be familiar with it, his sister is a freshman at Duke. She's on the volleyball team, and they have a really strong relationship. I think Harrison said in some of the after game availability early in the year that he and his sister try to get dinner every week, or they're very close. But the whole just conversation of, you know, has the trash talk begun this week? What's the rivalry kind of look like? And Harrison said it began last night when she was just making fun of me for losing our first game in a while. I wasn't too happy, but she thought it was hilarious. She's going to be in here. She'll be wearing a Carolina shirt, though. She'll be cheering for us, so that will be nice. And then Adam later on went and asked, like, was her joking around with you kind of just in this family group chat or a one-on-one text. And I thought this was hilarious. And Harrison said she FaceTimed me and she was just smiling. And I was like, why are you smiling? And she said, you lost. And I was like, oh my goodness. So that is quite the warm welcome back home for Harrison. He said he got this call yesterday, so the day after they had lost.
So supportive, right?
just a crazy, hilarious story. But yeah, that I was trying to think, and you guys might know better than I. When is the last time a UNC player has had a sibling that played at Duke at the same time? It doesn't have to be obviously in basketball. Just do any players come to mind that maybe had a sibling at Duke playing a sport at the same time they were playing basketball? Because I feel like this has got to be one of, if not the first times.
Didn't John Henson have a sister over there?
Amber, I think her name was.
Yeah, I mean,
pretty sure Amber Henson played basketball, dude. Lauren Ingram is Harrison's sister.
Yeah, Lauren Ingram. She's a freshman.
I want to see photographic proof of her wearing a Carolina shirt.
Well, he said he went and watched her play volleyball earlier during their season. Obviously, that's a fall sport. And he said he got booed when he walked in there because I think he said he was wearing a UNC hoodie, but then had a Duke volleyball shirt on underneath, which I thought was pretty funny.
I'm a little unclear on that because I went back and listened to it this morning, Evan.
Yeah.
And like he said, yeah, we were around him when he said it. He said, I went up to the nosebleeds and changed. Yeah. So I'm wondering if he like he was getting booed to where he's like, just give me a shirt, and went up there and like, you know, because he said he wore a UNC hoodie over to Cameron, by the
way. Tina in the chat said McCants. Rashonda McCants played for Carolina, at least briefly. I don't remember her playing for Duke. I could be wrong. My memory is terrible. I can tell you this. I'm not wearing a Duke shirt, even if my child played over there. And I'm not wearing a state shirt. I might wear red or I might wear black. But, yeah, that's interesting. Ingram, he's from Texas, goes to Stanford, ends up having a sister 8 miles down the road.
Yeah.
It's crazy how it works.
And I believe he said they love to go to Sutton's. Didn't he say that, Evan?
Did he say that? I don't remember that.
You might have walked away, but it was kind of funny how he was trying to explain Sutton's to some of the DTH Daily Tar Heel reporters.
They didn't know what Sutton was? Come on.
Wait a minute now.
Come on. If you're on school, you got to know Sutton's. That's the spot.
I know. They knew. They did. It was kind of like Harrison. You don't have to explain what Sutton's is.
Oh, okay.
He was like, I don't really know how to explain it. There's a little cafe in the back was how he called it, a cafe.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, he's so cultured. It's ridiculous, Yeah, there's a little cafe in the back. But like I said, I was listening to all that this morning, sort of trying to prepare. I was thinking about trying to do a Harrison thing that I hope to do tomorrow. When Armando said the thing about them having a players only meeting today, that sort of just changed my plan a little bit. But yeah, he said I think he said there's a chicken Caesar wrap that he likes to get, and it's fire. I think this was all stuff I was listening to this morning. But
the man goes to Sutton's and gets healthy food.
I mean,
I gain like 3 pounds, 5 pounds every time I walk in Sutton. It's worth every bit.
All due respect, I can't see myself getting a wrap there.
It's got to be something with grease, a lot of it. I love that place. That place has been legendary for a long. One of the few legendary places when I was in school back in the 89 to 93 that are still around. You can't let that place go anywhere. All right, anecdotes, and this is. I kind of want you to get into what you mentioned off the air, Adam, in this segment, but I want to let you guys tell a story because it's one thing that our listeners sort of enjoy, the behind the scenes of the beat. There are some great stories. You told one last week about Bob Ryan. So let's talk about it this week. What kind of stories do we have? Evan, I'll let you go first, but not to roast your coworker there quite yet.
We don't have to do that if we don't want to do that.
I'm going to have to cheat on this one because I wasn't at either of the away games. But this was a funny story that I was talking about with Adam earlier today with the Georgia Tech game. So usually how I do away games when I'm at home, I'm kind of weird, so I just watch them by myself. I like
Oh, this is a good story.
I like the volume turned down to 4 or 5. I like it super quiet. I'm silent while I watch games. And one thing that annoys all my roommates and like my friends and girlfriend is like I'm a big rewind guy with YouTube TV. So if
Like
I like
during the game?
oh yeah, during the game,
Oh,
and
yeah,
then
I
I'll
can't
just
do that.
and then I'll just make up the time during the commercials. So I hardly watch any commercials during games, and stuff like that. I think
But
it's
you
great.
have to stay off Twitter or
Of
X
course.
or whatever with the
Or like
message
the
board.
worst thing in the world is when I have stat broadcast pulled up and I
Oh,
could
yeah,
be
and
like,
it tells
"Oh,
you.
Yep.
someone's gonna score here," and my roommates would be like, "How'd you know that?"
You
I
can make a
learned that
lot of
during
money.
the pandemic. I never knew about that, until the
Oh,
pandemic. And then you can't go to some of these arenas, and you're like, oh gosh.
oh yeah,
Think
yeah.
about the money you could make from unexpected roommates going, Cadeau's about to hit a 3 right here. I feel it.
But so for the Georgia Tech game, I decided to watch it with one of my roommates because he has, I think his grandparents went to Georgia Tech, and he grew up a huge Georgia Tech fan, like Paul Johnson, Wingbone, triple option. I mean, he could talk about Georgia Tech forever. Um, and I was just like, I want to watch this game with him to observe just what it is like for someone who grew up a Georgia Tech fan watching, obviously, UNC, a school they go to now, play. And at the end of the game, he is just absolutely disheveled and said one of the funniest things I think he's ever said. And he was like, 18-year-old me could never imagine Georgia Tech bringing me so much pain off of 2 wins. Obviously, referring to the basketball game and the football game wins, which I just think is a pretty funny dynamic. And then also, I thought something interesting from that game is I guess that's the second time this sports season where UNC has had a field/court rush involved. So for everyone that, the whole Atlanta House of Horrors, I guess, kind of lived up to its name. But I just thought that was funny because I'm usually a weird person who likes to watch the games by themselves in pretty much silence. So taking a step outside for the Georgia Tech game and seeing someone who grew up a Georgia Tech fan but now has been a student here at UNC for the last 2.5 years was very interesting to look on from afar.
Couple things there. Carolina is 10 for their last 30 trips to Atlanta in
Isn't it
football
crazy?
and basketball.
What's so
10.
weird about that is like Atlanta is a UNC hub. I mean, my roommate had guys texting him who were at the game, people he knew from Georgia Tech, who was like, there are so many UNC people here. I mean, I think I heard on the TV, if I'm not mistaken, a Tar Heels chant was like breaking out in the first half.
Guys, it was like they were chanting at one point in the second half. The Carolina fans there were chanting defense, defense. And the Georgia Tech students started chanting offense. There were dueling chants during Georgia Tech possessions. Offense, defense, because the Carolina fans started the defense chant. Like, I know we
It's
got
weird.
this running thing that I've been doing about how Tar Heel chants have broken out everywhere we've gone on the road. Pitt, Clemson, NC State, they broke out. What was after that? FSU? No,
Boston
BC.
College.
BC was packed with UNC fans. And FSU, there were Tar Heel chants. There have been a very audible, very discernible Tar Heels chant at all. UNC played 6 road games in the month of January, which might explain why I look like a hobo. But the fan turnout and the fact that is resurgent the right word? I don't know. That this has sort of been a resurgent season. Carolina back up there in the top 5 of the polls. Carolina first place of the ACC. The 10-game winning streak. Like, the people are coming out, and I mean, damn. Like, I'm sorry to start cussing. Like, it was. I mean, Georgia Tech, you never think of as being some sort of like, wild atmosphere lately. I never got to see it when Lethal Weapon 3 was running around the Thriller Dome. I would have loved to seen it. I was a kid during those days, but there were a ton of Carolina fans there the other night, and they were louder. I mean, they were louder than everyone but the Georgia Tech students. The Georgia Tech students were doing all they could to keep up with the UNC fans.
What's crazy is they still can't win there. I mean, it's not a home court advantage for Georgia Tech. it's not a home court field or home field advantage for Georgia Tech in football, but yet they still have. Yeah, I don't get it at all. By the way, Deja Kelly looked like she just got dinged up, but she went off in the third quarter to cut the game to 49-48. Now at the start of the fourth quarter for Carolina, not quite sure what happened there. Anyway, Adam, you're up. Well, let me do this. Let me talk Johnny T-shirt, johnnytshirt.com. Always got to do this. They're sponsors. They've been here for a long time, and they've been on Franklin Street. It's another one of those places like Sutton's, right? I bought my first pair of sunglasses in August of 1989 at Johnny T-shirt. Some Tom Cruise Ray-Bans.
You remember this?
I remember this very vividly. In fact, I still have them somewhere, unless my children
God.
stole them. You know, Johnny T-shirt's a legendary place, just like Sutton's, just like whatever else is left. But you got to support them because it takes support for them to remain there. And if you can't get the Johnny T-shirt this Saturday when you're in town for the Duke game, if you are, you go to johnnytshirt.com, buy all the gear, all the swag. They're great for NIL stuff. They're great for all the warm weather, hot weather, cold weather, cool weather, tailgate, home gate, stickers, beer glasses, shot glass, whatever you need. Christmas ornaments. Johnny T-shirt's that spot. National Guys Pay the Bills. It's on the beat. Adam's story is coming next. All right, fellas. The women took the lead and have the ball. Adam, you're up with your stories.
They must be playing well.
They have started playing. Yes, they've started playing well.
TA, you're talking about buying your first pair of sunglasses, and I believe, did you call them Tom Cruise specials?
Yep, Ray-Ban, Tom Cruises.
I probably haven't thought about this in 30-some years, or however long it's been, 20-plus years. I had a friend of mine in school at UNC who wrote an entire paper on the topic. I hope it's okay to say on air. The topic was homosexual undertones in the movie Top Gun, the volleyball scene, where Maverick and Goose are playing against all the other guys. That was something to behold. That guy had a pair on him that did this. But
that's
anyway,
that's a hell of a pull from that movie.
It was unbelievable. It was unbelievable. I was like, wow, this is a welcome to college moment for me. You're doing this. This is what we're doing. We didn't do this in Mebane. Oh my gosh, unbelievable.
Present day, Adam. Stick with the present day. We don't want to go.
I apologize. I hope I don't get in trouble for that one.
That's hilarious.
Well, I have. I don't know that I have anything great, but two things for some reason just stand out in my mind, and it's sort of post game stuff in terms of stories. Talking to the UNC guys after the FSU game a couple of days ago, I could not help but notice, because most everybody's just chowing down on wings. UNC's flight out of Tallahassee was delayed by storms or something, and guys just sitting around eating wings. So there's just everybody you can think of, from Paxton Wojcik to Sean May, destroying chicken wings just outside of the locker room. And one person I noticed had their laptop in their lap, and they were just intently into the laptop. It was one Marcus Page. So me being the curious idiot that I am, I had to walk over there. I was like, Marcus, why are you not eating? And you know what he was doing? He was watching the Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech basketball game that was taking place at that time. I think it was like a 5 p.m. start, maybe. Is that right? It was some weird late afternoon start, because I later learned he had the scout on the Georgia Tech game. If you watched, Hubert was sort of checking with him several times throughout the Georgia Tech game. And it was sort of his first scout that they had given him. He said he'd watched something like 16 Georgia Tech games. He probably watched way too much Georgia Tech. But I thought that was kind of neat. These guys were just destroying. They order, you always get a post-game meal. They ordered from some restaurant right around there. And guys were just going in on it. And there you got Marcus, literally laptop in lap, grinding over some Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech stuff.
I assume they still do the same way, right? Is the assistant coaches split up the scouts throughout the year? I assume Hubert still does it the same way.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously, so you don't load one, so you don't have Lebo like just not sleeping for 2 days. Like they do split it up. But and so that was sort of my quickie from Tallahassee. The other night in Atlanta, I feel like this is too good not to share. Everybody was not pleased around. We're outside the UNC locker room. People are pissed. So I was videoing Armando, which was kind of a bit of a fire drill because people were coming out and we were trying to get them, and they really didn't have long. They didn't want to talk long because they weren't that happy. And I was videoing Armando when I got run over by Pat Sullivan. He just trucked me, and there was plenty of room to get around me, if you know what I'm saying. I don't know if Pat's not a big fan of my stupid ways, which is fine, or he'd need to send a message to the nerdy the beat reporter. But I was not braced. I was not braced for contact. I think I could have, given a shoulder back. I mean, he's way bigger. I'm 6'3" supposedly, but he's way bigger than me. And I got plowed over by Pat Sullivan outside. I think he just was mad, and I was asking Armando why Hubert jumped him a little bit at the start of the second half at Georgia Tech, set him down for like 5.5 minutes too. When Tech got something like 5 or 6 offensive rebounds early in the second half. But yeah, so anyway, Marcus on the laptop, Pat Sullivan truck stick on A. Smith.
Pat, those knees are shot. Maybe it was an accident.
Yeah, maybe he didn't see me down there. He's like, what is he, 6'8"?
Yeah, maybe he stumbled. Ain't many a dine anytime in Granville with Soul and all that crowd. The original Fab Five, by the way, recruiting class at North Carolina. Carolina women have fallen apart a little bit. They're down, I believe, 6 now after leading by 1.
I did explain that 5-5 to Jeremiah on the way to the airport the next day. TA.
Nice.
I had to tell him about Clifford Rozier. He had never heard of Clifford Rozier. So
yeah, and back in the day, they all lived in Granville South, and a friend of mine was a manager there. Shout out to Mike, and played many a Sega Genesis, Lakers Bulls, or Lakers Celtics back in the day. Evan, you don't know nothing about that. That's pixeled stuff, man. That's ancient video games over there. But yeah, Sullivan, Reese, Phelps, Montrose, and Cliff Rozier, the original Fab Five. Rozier, of course, transferred on to Louisville. Metro Conference Player of the Year a couple times in a row before life caught up with him.
And they had one at each position, right? You had a point guard shoot. You had Phelps at the 1, Donald Williams at the 2, Reese at the 3. Yeah.
It was Donald was a year after, but it was totally straight Dean Smith, right? To recruit a team, not just recruit a bunch of different athletes and put them in there. He had Montrose, of course, was your 5, Rozier was your 4, Reese and Sullivan could swap at the 3, and then
right there you go.
And then Phelps was your 1. And one thing, Derek Phelps was a heck of a lot bigger than people realize. He was 6'4"-ish, and he'd lock you down. Anyway.
Stretchy, too.
Yeah, I mean, they would have never won an athletic contest, that group, but they also won the national championship, that group, over the second coming, I guess, of the Fab Five in Michigan.
Can you imagine the Montross recruiting? 7-footer out of Indiana, flat top. I mean, I would think there got to be some amazing stories just from his recruitment.
Yeah, absolutely, because that's the Indiana family.
Yeah.
And he comes to Chapel Hill and ends up being the legend and now the legacy. With his passing, the hats back there, folks, you can still buy them. Anyway, let's talk Duke. Duke, North Carolina. I put its title of this show, the big one, Volume 1. I'll throw it up there for people to see. I thought it was pretty nifty. Adam, how big is this game, other than it being Duke and Carolina? If you can separate that, if you know where I'm going or trying to get to, how big is this game for Carolina to get back on a winning track after losing to Georgia Tech? I think it ramps up even more outside of the rivalry because of that game on Tuesday night?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fairly huge, Like I was telling these guys, like it always feels like it takes, to me at least, it feels like it takes so long for the first UNC Duke game to get here. You go through November, December, January, obviously. The first one gets here, and then I always feel like it's just a sprint, like from there on. Like the second one, I always feel like the second one gets here so quick, and they're like, oh my God, it's March. We're going to the tournament. Like I just feel like from this point forward, it becomes sort of like a sprint to the finish line. And I mean, I think for 10,000 reasons, it's pretty dang big. I mean, these are the teams that one of these teams is going to win the ACC regular season title. I think it's safe to say. And Carolina had a chance to really put a stranglehold on it if they win in Atlanta, and then they beat Duke to get to 11-0 in the league. I mean, that would be a 3-game lead, I think, on the Devils. They're 7-2, I think it is. Carolina hasn't had their midweek bye yet, and Duke has, so they're like a half game behind. But yeah, for everything that happened Tuesday night, I think it just adds to the importance of everything that's going to happen on Saturday. Plus the game's in Chapel Hill. I mean, it's, as we know, it's not an easy place to play over in Durham. So I think this could be really important for a ton of different reasons. The response that you get coming off your first ACC loss. UNC had not lost a game, Tommy, in 45 days.
That's nuts.
Yeah, I mean, what were you doing on December 16th? I mean, it's a long time ago. That's the last time they lost a game. In Atlanta, by the way. Yeah. Last 2 losses have come down there. But yeah, I mean, I think I'm super interested to see like how these matchups look. I always am interested to see how these teams are going to match up. Duke's personnel changes a lot year to year. Obviously, UNC's personnel has changed a ton since the last time these teams played. So, I think it's really big. I think if UNC wins the game and they're 10-1, sort of starting the second half of the ACC season, 10-1. I think everyone would take that pulls for the Tar Heels. And I think it would be a huge response from the loss. And, obviously to take round 1, the game could be crucial when you're sorting out the ACC seeds, sorting out with the NCAA tournament seeds. So, I think going 0-2 this week would obviously not be the right recipe. And if you're able to beat Duke in the showdown Saturday night, really nice response from the debacle. It was Carolina's worst game of the season Tuesday night. I don't think that's a stretch to say. Season worst from the field, season worst from the line. So, yeah, big one.
The big one. Evan, get in here on the matchups a little bit. I think it's interesting. One thing that Dewey talked about in the postgame, and folks are in this chat and didn't listen to Dewey in the postgame, he blew the trap game BS out of the water. He said nobody, when people say, oh, if you're going to lose one, it's better that you lose that one than the next one. It was an interesting take by Dewey on that as far as from the player standpoint, the coach standpoint. But this basketball, Evan, is all about matchups. And Duke presents some matchups problems. Georgia Tech, one thing that concerned me with the Georgia Tech game is they kept running that pick and roll and slide down. The big just follows the guard straight down the lane over and over and over. And if we've watched Duke before, we've watched Duke take advantage of what they've seen on tape more so than any teams. If you go back and watch when Brandon Ingram used to ISO on Carolina and, to post up guards. Jeremy Roach is not posting anybody up, but they've got Proctor and McCain that can do it. How do you see these matchups sort of shaking out, Evan?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting. I was kind of going through it earlier today because if I'm not mistaken, Jeremy did not start the game against Virginia Tech. I think Caleb Foster started because Jeremy's coming back, I think from an ankle injury. But I would assume Jeremy is going to start on Saturday. So that means their 3 starting guards are going to be Roach, Proctor, and McCain. And when I sift it through my head, what makes the most sense in terms of defensively for UNC is I would guess RJ would guard Jeremy Roach. I think Cadeau would guard McCain. and Cormac might match up with Proctor just because Proctor's 6'5", and Cormac is 6'5" in his own right and kind of lanky. So I think that Proctor Cormac matchup could be interesting because Cormac does hustle and show a lot of intensity on the defensive side, but I also think he lacks a little bit of the lateral quickness that you might want for a guy who's going to guard someone like Tyrese. And then I think on the flip side, it's going to be interesting how Kyle Filipowski and Bacot match up, because I think they both present pretty big issues for each other.
Is that the matchup though? Is that the matchup you want for Carolina?
Yeah, I would say so. I think because I think Filipowski at times has been exposed as a center on defense. I think people coming into the year didn't realize what a blanket it was having a shot blocker like Lively behind him. And I think Bacot has shown to a degree pretty good lateral quickness for a guy his size on the outside. And though Filipowski can handle the ball and can make some moves, he's not like a crazy quick, fluid Paolo Banchero kind of guy at that size. I mean, it's not an unguardable spot that I think Bacot will be in. But I think both of them do present issues for each other. That'll be interesting. Mark Mitchell and Harrison Ingram are kind of a similar player in some respects. Mark's a little bit bigger, a little bit longer. I would argue Harrison's a little bit better offensively. In terms of just the game outlook in general, though, kind of how Adam was saying, this is going to be a pretty interesting game for NCAA tournament looking ahead for UNC, just because at this current moment, in terms of 1 seeds in the tournament, my guess is the Big East, the Big 10, and the Big 12 each have one.
Right.
I think Purdue's going to have one. I think UConn's going to have one. And I think either Houston or Kansas are going to have one. I think that leaves, and I don't think the Big 12 is going to have 2, no matter what the national kind of narrative on that conference is. I think it's either going to be Houston or Kansas, not both. And that leaves, I think, the conference champion of the ACC, SEC, and Pac-12 left for that last one. And I think at this current moment, with how the resumes stack out, I think UNC has that edge over Arizona from the Pac-12, and then Tennessee, Kentucky, whoever you take from the SEC is your best team. I guess we'll find out on Saturday when they play each other. But I think this one for UNC is going to be a game that kind of gets looked back on when you look at tournament seeding in March. I don't think the Georgia Tech game is necessarily going to be a game that people say that's why UNC didn't get a 1 seed. It's going to be, if they lose on Saturday, that's going to be why they don't get a 1 seed. It's not really going to be the Georgia Tech game. And then, like you said, Tommy, I mean, they've got Clemson on a short turnaround on Tuesday, which is not going to be a gimme game. And then they go at Miami and at Syracuse. So, I mean, these next 4 games are big, and they're all present their own challenges in different ways. And if you kind of go into this tough stretch, losing your first 2, it could be tough to turn things around because you don't really have a gimme game on the schedule. You don't have Louisville coming up. You don't have Notre Dame right around the corner. So it's definitely going to be a game that has, outside of just the rivalry aspect, it's going to be a game that has a lot of implications moving forward.
Armando said it today too. He said, whichever one of us gets in foul trouble between him and Filipowski. I mean, Armando knows, it's obviously the role that refs play. I mean, I think that's going to be a huge, I know you have a point, Tommy. I think that's going to be sort of a subplot. Who can stay out of foul trouble? Because, I think Armando can, I don't want to say neutralize Filipowski, but I think that's a matchup that works for UNC if you can keep Armando out there. Because Evan made some good points about Filipowski. Who wouldn't benefit from having Derek Lively blocking 8 shots around the rim like freaking pterodactyl? Duke's rebounding is suspect, like badly suspect. I think UNC, while they don't have Day'Ron Sharp, Walker Kessler, Garrison Brooks, and Armando Bacot running, the quadruple towers, I think UNC can hurt them on the offensive boards. I mean, Harrison Ingram is a maniac on the offensive board since the calendar turned to 2024. So, I think that's an area UNC can thrive. Anyway, TA, don't want to cut you off. Go for it.
Well, I was listening to you and watching the women. They're down 3 with the ball with 30 seconds left or so. Here's my point about the matchups, right? Remember, was it last year, 2 years ago, Carolina started Bacot on Banchero, and that was a disaster. I mean, that got them blown out, I guess, in 2022, the first game there in Smith Center. I'm not so sure I don't put Baycott on Mitchell, because Mitchell's not a post guy. And he'll shoot a three, but he's not a guy that's going to force Baycott to guard heavily in the post like Filipowski will do. And Ingram can take it, and I don't know how Duke will flip the matchup, but I like Ingram on Filipowski to get Filipowski in foul trouble more than Baycott, because Ingram's shown the ability to back guys down and really put pressure on them to score. Now, the height difference there is it might be an issue, but one thing's for certain, and you mentioned it, Adam, and Evan, you mentioned it too, and Baycott mentioned it, you got to stay out of foul trouble. You can, and Jay Billis, he shows his Duke colors when it comes to this game, and rightfully so. But the point he always makes, you can get 2 points back. You cannot get a foul back. That's something that Elliot Cadeau's got to learn.
Yes.
And folks raising Cain about none of those were fouls on Elliot Cadeau, it does not matter. Elliot Cadeau fouled out. Whether they were fouls or not, he fouled out. He's got to adjust. Proctor's going to be a problem if Cadeau's on Proctor. I mean, just like the Georgia Tech point guard was a big dude. It's going to be those type games is that Carolina players have to play smart. You cannot. Baycott's biggest issue was what the first 4 years of his career, Adam, getting fouls 30 feet from the basket. Can't do it. You cannot do it in a game like this. You can't let it come down to the official making the call. I think Ingram on Filipowski and Baycott on Mitchell, I think, is a better matchup for North Carolina to keep Baycott out of foul trouble. But I don't get paid enough to make those decisions.
Don't forget you're going to have Jalen Washington and Jalen Withers coming in too. I mean, I mean, Duke, I don't mean to make Duke sound like the slippery rock, but like, who does Duke bring in? Ryan Young? Well, they have Sean Stewart. Sean Stewart is a big active body for Duke. But
Ryan Young always makes a play against Carolina.
He's there. He would be their first guy off the bench down low. I think. I think that's right. If I've got their personnel right. I mean,
he might be their only. I don't think Sean plays all that much. I could be wrong, but
I think Young is the main one, and Young has not looked good at times this year. There's been some games where he was exposed.
He's super unathletic. I mean,
he always gets a rebound and kicks out to an open three, and you're just like, come on, man.
Yeah, I mean, he's a banger. He's a banger, and he does what they ask. I mean, you could see Ryan Young and Harrison Ingram probably working on Wall Street one day and just killing guys at the New York City Y. They could just destroy them.
Running over media guys just trying to do their job, right?
Oh, by the way, shout out my guy Timothy Phelps, I think, was taken up for me in the chat. I appreciate the love. I would have yelled bloody murder to try to get the refs' attention for the charge. We used to do that back in the day. Like, if you're trying to take a charge in a game, you give a little yell. Try to sell it a little bit.
But you can't get the snap. You can't do the head snap. No, there's nothing to snap.
Nothing to snap. Really, he got me from the side too. Like he was just. It was like I was trying to screen, and he was like, "No, I'm blowing the screen up." He blew me up.
And Teddy V would have turned his back on you too. I mean,
right.
He has now officially turned his back on RJ twice.
RJ appealed to him like this. RJ had his hands out, and Teddy was like, "Nah, I'm out of here. We got a plane to catch."
Last sponsorship read: Carolina women are down 3. State's got the ball at the line with 13 seconds left. congruityhr.com/Tar Heels. Get your small and mid-sized business a free assessment if you're an Inside Carolina person. They will take care of you. They'll get your business blowing up. They've gone from a North Carolina base to a national base or a national presence. They'll do the same for your small to mid-sized business. Tech support, technology, customer service, Darren and Matt, wonderful people. If I ask everybody to like and review us and all on this podcast stuff and on YouTube, but go to Congruity and fill out that questionnaire at congruityhr.com/Tar Heels. See what they got to offer for you. Last thing, I'm gonna let you each guys get some going away presents. You're gonna give our readers presents. Evan, I'll let you start. Give us a key to a Carolina win. If Carolina wins, what are we talking about in the post-game podcast following the ball game?
UNC finding a consistent option on offense outside of RJ Davis. And that's really, I think, for the rest of the season. I think at this point, you can almost book it that RJ is going to score a round or over 20 points every game. In the back of my mind, I've been waiting for this game where RJ has an off night, and maybe I just jinxed him here. But I mean, if you look at his numbers, I don't think he's really had a poor offensive game since Riverside when he had 8 points. He's just scoring 15, 20 plus night in and night out. But against Georgia Tech, he was the only guy in double figures on UNC. Cormac, Harrison both had 9 points. They combined 6 of 28 from the field. You're going to have to find a guy who on a night in and night out can give you 14 to 15 points. And I don't know who that is in this game per se. But if UNC wins, one of those, of it being Armando, Harrison, or Cormac, will step up and give you a consistent, efficient 14, 15 points.
Yeah, the box score will not read 28, 9, 9, 6, 5, 4. Adam,
how
close
ugly
us
were
out.
some of those Cormac shots the other night too, by the way? I mean,
Dude, he looks like, and Dewey said it in a cut of VOD about it too as well. He looks like he's trying to shoot as fast as humanly possible. I mean, and there's a lot of times where just take a half breath. You know, it's like it's a hot potato. I got to get it going up as quick as possible. When it goes in, it's pretty.
yeah.
But 3 for 14 from those two guys, and Carolina gets beat handily if they repeat that.
Yeah, think about it. They shot 3 for 14 and they lost by 1.
I know.
It's kind of crazy to think. But yeah, what he airballed the one. There was one he had a wedgie, right, where it got stuck between the. I mean, I was like, how is this happening?
Yeah.
The thing about Cormac that I think is interesting, and I've been trying to go back and watch the beginning of games, but I think almost every game within the first 90 seconds, he's shooting a 3. It almost feels like he's kind of pressing at the beginning of games. And for him, his numbers inside the arc on mid-range shots are actually pretty efficient on the year, both off the dribble and off the catch. And he's also a guy that's shooting over 90% from the line. So
Yeah,
I wish he would focus on hitting a 15-footer, get to the line first, and then shoot your first 3. Because I think once he gets into a rhythm, like you guys said, it looks pretty. But it just feels like at times he is really, he's in the back of his head. He knows he's supposed to be the shooter, and it seems like he kind of
does not finish
pressing.
it. Yeah, he doesn't finish at the rim very well either.
No.
I mean, Elliot Cadeau is probably the best finisher at the rim. RJ's up there as well. Jalen Washington obviously is. But you got to go into the rim. You can't just throw that dipsy-do stuff, and he had a couple opportunities to do that. But Adam, yeah, what am I talking about, or what? Excuse me, what are Joey and Dewey talking about in the post game? If Carolina wins this game, and you can't pick Evans.
I can't even remember what Evans said. Oh, secondary scorer. Joey and Dewey. What is that? Sounds like a Little Rascals or something. I mean, what is this, a comic
much.
strip?
I told you I'm gonna be at the game, so they can handle it.
Is one of these guys got a slingshot in his back pocket? Like, what the hell? Joey and Dewey. Sorry. Been a long day. Been a long week. But here's what I give you. I'm not going to answer you, but this is just my feeling on this. I feel like this is one of those. I just feel like this is one of those games where, like, Jalen Withers or Seth Trimble or just someone like that. I'm not going to say Paxton Wojcik because God bless him. I'm not believing in that guy right now. But I feel like this could be a Jalen Withers game. This could be a Jalen Washington game. Heck, the other night in Atlanta, I was thinking it's going to be a Jalen. I was telling Jeremiah, I was like, is this going to be the Jalen Washington game? Like, he was playing pretty well there for a while. I feel like, Elliot Cadeau. I'm super interested to see what goes on there. I don't know if, I think he can get to the cup on these Duke guards. I think he's more explosive and athletic than Jeremy Roach, although Jeremy Roach is obviously a seasoned vet. I just assume Roach, like Evan was saying, is going to be chasing around RJ. That's what I just would assume. I don't think Proctor can stay in front of him, but I don't think Proctor will be guarding him. I'm not sure. Is McCain a good defensive player? Do you think, Evan? I don't know.
He's strong. He's a stocky guy.
Yeah, they
so
have similar builds.
I could see McCain almost pulling a Villanova on Cadeau when Duke's on offense and try to back him down. But in terms of like lateral movement, no, I don't think Jared McCain could stay in front of Cadeau.
It's such hindsight to say, but like I feel like if Cadeau doesn't foul out in Atlanta, Carolina finds a way to win the game somehow, just because of just the pace. It's just different when he's in there.
2 losses this year for UNC. Cadeau has fouled out in.
Right, did he foul out the Villanova game?
Villanova, he fouled out. I think was it early in overtime? Yeah.
Yeah.
Very same way by getting cheap ones.
How in the world do you get 5 fouls in the second half?
In 8 minutes. Yeah.
How in the world?
Yeah, that was.
I hope you had a seatbelt that night, Tommy. Were you?
No, I mean, I kept saying you just got to get away. Don't put yourself in that position. And people were yelling at me like, "What's he supposed to do? Give up a layup?" Yes, I just said, you can get a point back. You can't get a foul back.
But I feel like
your guy scores 20 points and you score 25 points, that's a net positive.
I just feel like this is one of those games where, I hate to say cancel out, but you could see, maybe Flip and Armando have a stalemate in a way. I think Flip's going to get some of his points, or maybe Roach and RJ. But, I think, a Withers play here, a Seth Trimble play there. I think you're going to be talking about, Tommy, I think when Joey and Dewey get together, I think you're going to be talking about some sort of, maybe an unlikely hero or something. I think UNC wins the game. I hope I'm not the kiss of death here, but I think UNC is going to win the game. I got it. I'll say 81-75. And obviously I'm terrible at those predictions, as we know from football season, but I think UNC wins the game. I think it's going to be a great atmosphere. I think the crowds have been good this year. I think it's going to be a great crowd. I think the Harrison Ingrams and Cormac Ryans of the world are going to be jacked up, experiencing this. This is going to be what, Armando's 10th? Is it 10 or 11?
10, right?
Duke Carolina games for the elder statesman. I think it's going to be fantastic. If our listeners are going, holler at us if you see us there. But yeah, I think you have some play. Maybe a Seth Trimble knockaway, and Seth Trimble actually finishes one rather than somehow screws it up. But I think it's going to be something like that. Some sort of an unlikely hero that turns in some sort of a difference maker type play.
Indeed, Carolina and Duke 6:30 in the Smith Center. Game day 11 o'clock. I think I saw where the doors open at 8:30 for students and 8:45 for the general public. So if you're in Chapel Hill, check that out. Check out Franklin Street. Do all that stuff. Check out Johnny T-shirt while you're on Franklin Street. Check out Congruity while you're online. That's Adam Smith. That's Evan Rogers. It's been Inside Carolina's On the Beat. The big one, Volume 1, Saturday at 6:30. Hope everybody has a good evening. Hope everybody's safe. Carolina women are about to lose. Glad you've taken care of us as we take care of you. Peace, boys.